Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Changing How We See Ourselves. And I've been thinking about this the last couple of days after I just dropped both of my daughters off at school. I was able to do the drive myself to Philadelphia, a trip to Boston, and I didn't do the drive with fear or worry. I did it with peace, and I feel so happy that my girls are all settled into school. And when I was young, I used to drive all the time. I grew up on Long Island. I drive into the city. I never thought much about driving. And then when I got married, my husband at the time did not like how I drove. And so during the marriage, he always drove. And if I did drive, he would complain, he would make faces. And so I started to really believe that I wasn't a good driver. And then the times I drove without him, I became very nervous. And then when my husband left me about 4 years ago, I was left with this fear. And it was very overwhelming because part of my independence is going places myself, being able to take my children places. And I feel really good that I've overcome this fear that I developed during my marriage. So after this car ride, I keep thinking to myself, what other story am I writing about my life? What other limitation do I have about myself? And I keep saying to myself, every day since the trip, sit down and really think about what you want. Don't think about what you could have. Don't think about what you think is possible or not possible. What do you really connect to? And when I do this, it's a very different experience because sometimes when we write down our goals, we write them down based on who we think we are. And it comes with a lot of limited beliefs, fears, and self-doubt. So I ask you now, don't sit down and write your goals knowing yourself. Sit down and think about if you didn't know what degree you had, if you didn't know where you lived, if you didn't know what was in your life and what wasn't. What is your true desire? And yes, sometimes there are things that are not possible at certain ages or certain capabilities. Like I'm never going to be in the Olympics for ice skating. But I did wonder if I stopped ice skating because I became afraid that I would hurt myself, or I stopped ice skating because I believed that my ankles weren't strong enough. I don't know. But I am very curious to keep unraveling this idea and see what are my true dreams without my fears and without my doubts. Are we all limiting ourselves because our dreams are connected with a limited view of ourselves? But if you're willing to wake up every day and say, I don't know everything about myself. I really don't know all that I'm capable of. I really don't know that my fears are true. All I know is here I am with the hope and possibility that my life can change from this day forward. All I know is here I am with the hope and possibility that I am capable of so much more than I imagine. All I know is here I am with the hope and possibility that I could connect to my true desires without my fear, without my doubt, and connect with the life that I really want. And yes, when you go through this process, you are going to find out that you have limiting beliefs about yourself. And there's another piece too. Sometimes it's not just about fear and doubt. Sometimes it's about not expanding because we have such a limited view of ourselves based on the fact we think we know ourselves so well. We just don't expand. We don't try new things. We reach a certain age and think, well, we can't work anymore. We can't still start a business. We can't learn an instrument. We can't find love again. We're so sure who we are, and that's who we're willing to take out into the world. But if you kind of keep letting go of this idea and keep saying, I don't really know myself, or maybe there are things about myself I don't know, or maybe there's more to me than I know at this moment, whatever the thought is, you're going to take more chances. Because again, a lot of times we don't take chances because we've defined ourselves. Our likes, our dislikes, our goals, what's possible, what's not. So what I've been doing the last couple of days, and you might want to consider this for yourself, is I started to make a list describing myself. This is who I think I am. And then next to each thing I wrote down, I asked myself, is this an expanded thought or a limiting thought? And then after that, I wrote, how do you know this is true about yourself? And then after that, yes, I used the maybe practice. I wrote, maybe there's more to you than you can imagine. Maybe this is a limiting view of yourself. And then I asked myself, if you didn't believe this thought, what would you do? What would you be capable of? What would you desire? And as I'm unraveling this, I'm seeing that some of the thoughts about myself are uplifting and enriching and beautiful and wonderful. But some of the thoughts I have about myself are protective, might not be true, are somewhat limiting. And I'm questioning that if I didn't believe that thought about myself, what would be possible? So if you do this and you keep investigating your thoughts about yourself and asking all these questions, you might just take a different step forward in a different direction. And it might be as small as walking in the other direction to work, trying out a new food, taking a new trip, or maybe you start to see that you didn't believe you could have something or you were capable of something. And as you move away from that and realize you have no idea if you could do this or not, you might just take that chance. New job, going back to school, going out to see if you could fall in love again, moving, dealing with a relationship different, whatever it is. We limit our own self based on how well we think we know ourselves. And also another issue is the people around us sometimes are compounding it because they're busy telling us who we are. If we're not good, if we are good, what we do, what's great, what's not. So it's not only the internal conversation, it's also the external one, just like my ex-husband-to-be. I first heard the narrative from him and then I took it in. And then I really believed that I could not drive well. But by questioning that thought and remembering there was a time I did believe differently and asking myself what could be different and how did I know I couldn't do it if I never tried, I moved away from that. And again, driving could be a much easier issue than totally changing your life or putting yourself out for new love or a job, whatever it is. But we don't know ourselves as much as we think, and that's a good thing. It's good to be uncertain about who we are, not about our values, not about our morals. Those we could lock in on, what we believe, truth and justice, whatever's important to you, charity, not those things. It's the limits, it's the fears, it's the things that don't allow us to truly discover new things in life and explore ourselves and express ourselves. We tell so many stories that the world is limiting us, yet we tell the same story within us. So what happens when we don't believe the limits? What happens when we let go of the past? What happens if we say, I don't know if I can do this or not, but I'm going to try? Maybe my thoughts are not true. Maybe my fears are not true. Maybe life could be different. Maybe I could have new dreams and new desires, and maybe I could have the life that I want. For me, this is such an expansion because I thought my goals were based on my true desires. And I'm sure a lot of them are. But now I'm wondering, are some of my goals limited because I had limiting beliefs about who I am and what I can do? And so what a good time for all of us to look at this. I think we are all capable of so much more than we could even imagine. I think our dreams are bigger and our desires are bigger. And I think that if we can let go of this identity and this knowing and be willing not to know exactly who we are and not to know exactly what we can do and what we can't, then we will go out into the world and take some giant leaps. Try new things, maybe fall on our face, but we'll get up again and take some other giant leaps and really change our lives, have new experiences, achieve things we never imagined, and spend the rest of our days expanding ourselves and every day creating a newness because we have an expansive view of ourselves and an expansive view of what's possible. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe or Year Without Men, they're available to all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you like this podcast, you could subscribe and leave a comment.